Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the ID Update. That's right, it is already the last Friday of the month, and the eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that this isn't Joey that's with me. This is a bit different. For those of you who don't know, and I can't believe there's many of you showing up that don't, this is Heidi. Heidi, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Heidi. I work in my day job as a customer education manager, but I have like 4 or 5 or 6 other side hustles that I just do for fun, including getting my PhD in instructional design and technology, hosting the Block podcast for L&D professionals, and other coaching mentorship of new and aspiring IDs here and there. Oh, and teaching a podcasting course for the University of Florida. So
just on the side, you know. That's
just a few.
Awesome. Fantastic stuff. And I am dropping a link to the Block podcast in the chat. Do make sure you go and check that out. But for a very special one time only, let's roll the totally remastered from the ground up introduction. There's only one place for the breaking news in the world of instructional design. The ID Update with Tom and Heidi. All the news you never knew you never needed. Only on IDT. There we are. Let it never be said that I put very little effort into content creation on this channel. That was hours of work.
It looks like it, yeah.
Yes, it was very, very, very serious stuff.
That was actually my stunt double in that photo.
Oh, there we go. Look at this. It's... despite the slight change there, we are still discussing the same thing, so don't worry, you haven't been hoodwinked. We are going to be discussing why L&D has done such a bad job. I mean, whether or not they've done a bad job in the past and still are. We're going to talk about sort of performance improvement and whether or not that's the future of the industry. We will cover kind of the usual bits as well, a bit of the tech stuff, any news stories, what's been going on with us. Basically, I'll do Joey's bit right at the front. No one's done anything meaningful. Camtasia's not released anything. Storyline has fixed some stuff that shouldn't have been broken in the first place, like the fact that images would go fuzzy if you made them smaller as opposed to bigger, because apparently that's how scaling works now. That's the kind of month we've been looking at from an edtech perspective. We did obviously have learning technologies, in which we learned that certainly, I suppose you guys had ATD over in the States as well. It's conference month. Here we discovered that there are an obscene number of platforms available that all do the same thing. That was kind of the takeaway. And it turns out a lot of content that's been created in the kind of COVID years wasn't great. These were the big insights that we walked away from that event with. I'm being slightly harsh. It was a fantastic event, but somewhat depressing, shall we say, when you look at the state of the industry.
Yeah, I wasn't able to go to ATD. I had serious FOMO all week long, looking at all the conversations from there. As far as vendors, it seemed similar. I saw a lot of swag photos of all the different vendor booths. But yeah, the bad content as a result of COVID's new. That's a new theme.
This is it. We would never have worked that out before. It turns out just throwing stuff into an authoring tool that was already like 15 years old is not actually the best way to author content.
Interesting. I mean, think of like other technology that's 15 years old. Like, just do that for a minute. Like, what came out in 2006?
Let's see. We were using Windows XP.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
So
what were the gaming systems?
2003. What are we looking at? PS2? No. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it would be, yeah, because PlayStation 3 wouldn't have been out that early. So, yeah, we were talking PlayStation 2. Yeah, that would be out. Yeah. PlayStation 2, we're talking original Xbox.
I think so. Yeah. And was we 2006?
Sounds
It was
about
early
right.
2000s.
Good to me. What are we talking? 2000 and did we say 2006?
2006 was, I don't know, I can't math.
Oh,
Like 15 years ago. What's 15 years ago?
2007 ish,
2007.
2006,
Okay,
2007.
yeah.
Okay, so Halo 3 came out in 2007.
Oh,
So we
yeah.
would have been on the Xbox 360. I stand corrected, but that is a lot. Bungie was still making Halo games. That's how long
I
ago
love it.
this was.
Well, just to give you an idea, it was 2007, 2008 that I got the first ever. It was the LG chocolate phone. Do you remember that?
Oh, I have one
It
of those.
was Oh, really?
The black
Yeah.
glossy slide ones.
Oh,
Oh,
I had a blue one, and it was the first phone that played MP3s.
so it's very
The first
exciting.
Could you imagine if you were still using the first phone that played MP3s today?
This is it. iPods were still a thing.
Mm-hmm.
People
iPod
actually went and
Shuffle.
bought them. Oh god, this is it.
I had a Shuffle because they were cheap, right? Like, but you didn't know which song was coming next.
So this is the kind of age of things we're talking about. So yeah, it turns out just throwing that age of content into an authoring tool, not great. 2003, original PlayStation was still around in 2003. That's a good point. Yeah, it would have been. GameCube, Xbox.
Oh yeah,
The Game Boy Advance was hot. The Game Boy Advance is still hot, and I will not hear anything about otherwise. That's where Nintendo should have stopped. That was peak Nintendo. Everything since then, very much downhill. Also, the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast should have been a much bigger deal. Best-selling games were Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, Mario Kart, Double Dash, and Final Fantasy X2. Oh, or Final Fantasy 12, I should say. Yeah, that's it's quite depressing that I'm sitting here and thinking I would go back. Like people say, the future's better. I'm not convinced. Like I would. 2003 to 2007 sound pretty good right now. Cool. So yeah, turns out content of that age not so hot. So usually we do this is where we do the kind of, so what are you drinking and this thing. But Heidi, you don't drink, do you?
I don't drink, but I do have iced coffee in a mason jar so that I feel cool.
Is that the proper hipster way to drink?
Oh yeah.
Not just iced coffee, has to be in something other than a cup.
Yes. Well, and part of the reason why is it's like a little bit smaller than a big glass. So I feel, I mean, it's not really, but I feel like I'm drinking less coffee at what is 3 p.m. for me. And being approaching middle age quickly, I don't want to like be seen drinking coffee too late in the afternoon. But also my husband just keeps buying mason jars and doing like, oh, I'm going to make overnight oats, or I'm going to do this with them or do that. And then they end up just sitting in the cupboard. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to drink out of them. I'm just going to use them.
Love it.
What are you drinking?
Well, I have got from the excellent people at Brass Castle Brewery a Bad Kitty Vanilla Porter, which I've been looking forward to since it arrived on Monday.
Awesome.
Oh, that's leaving the can quite rapidly. Okay, so I'll pour this. So, as we were kind of saying, today's kind of really big conversation is around whether or not L&D has been effective, is being effective, is capable of being effective, maybe, and whether or not, well, I got some flack for this, the wording of this, whether or not performance improvement or specifically HPI, HPT are the future. I'm not saying they're new or that they're developing fields.
Sure.
They are long-standing, very established fields, arguably more established than L&D. The question was, are they going to replace L&D in the future or fix L&D in the future? I got more than a few messages saying they're not new industries. So no, I know they're not. But that's my fault for poor wording. So if you're here in the chat, stand down. It's all good. I understand. And thank you, John, for all the nerdy insights.
Yes.
That's
I'm just
excellent.
now seeing that. It's perfect. Love it.
Awesome. So, what do you reckon? L&D, has it been effective?
Such a loaded question. What's your definition of effective?
Let's start there. Maybe let's start with question then. So, if let's pretend we were setting up the L&D industry, it's never existed before. In the modern workplace right now, what would you define as it being effective?
That's a good question. I think that something not all L&D departments do very well is properly aligning themselves to business goals, right? Like there needs to be some sort of alignment with what the business is doing. And I think a lot of times because L&D sometimes does their own thing, like they're like, we know what's best for you, right? Like, don't worry about those silly business goals. We know what's best for you. We're the experts, right? I've met a lot of people that are very much like, I'm the expert. You should listen to me. But without aligning to business goals and without that, with some don't even know like what the business goals are, right? Like, what are the business goals? And without being able to do that, there's only so far you can go before the rest of the company sees you as a cost center and then one by one gets rid of your team. And I've seen that happen as well, where it's like, well, we used to have 5 instructional designers here, but now we have 2, but it's fine because like we're just maintaining, right? Like we're just maintaining these 12-year-old e-learning courses in the course library. So it's fine. Like it's fine. But you know, as people keep leaving, like no one's replaced until you look around and you're like, whoa, I'm the only person on this L&D team. And, you know, it's you have a really hard time proving your worth when you've got one person doing everything. And that's the other thing that you need to be effective, I think, is to God forbid I suggest it, but to know what the function of L&D is, right? Like to know what the purpose is and to know, to have people in L&D leadership that are familiar with L&D in general, right? Because I've also seen a lot of people who come into it from other areas, right? Like you were a leader in HR and you ended up overseeing the training function or whatever, but they don't understand what the point is or what the purpose is or what instructional designers or learning and development professionals can do or can offer. And so it becomes like this, well, I don't know what to do with this person other than to let them make PowerPoints look pretty.
Yeah, I think I think it's a huge issue and a big hurdle to try and get over. I think for me, if I was going to define an effective kind of what I wish L&D would do, it would be to focus in on, is everyone capable? And then let's improve performance. Those for me, those are the two steps of a well-functioning L&D department. Can everyone do their job? Then can everyone do their job better?
I like it.
It is simple, but I kind of think if that underpinned every decision every person working in L&D made in the workplace, and I would stress that because there are exclusions to that. There are learning areas in the world where that does not apply. Higher education is a prime example. In fact, all education is a sort of prime example. Some work in non-profit areas is somewhat that as well, because although it's workplace learning, it's not workplace learning as we would see it in the UK, or probably so much in the States, because you're dealing with very different challenges.
Sure.
It's very rare that a workplace learning professional in the UK has to go, well, can everyone here read? It's a fairly, yes is the default response. You would be very
Sure.
surprised to run into a no ever. But there are exclusions like that. And that's why I kind of look at the world of performance somewhat enviously, and think they've nailed that. They've really cut through the, I don't know, the fluff that maybe sits around words like learning. And I guess because learning pulls double duty as learning in the workplace context and learning in the proper learning, or the philosophical truth of learning, as I always
Correct.
like to refer to it as. Yeah, I feel like if it had that kind of laser focus, the industry would be more effective. And that's kind of how I measure in the question of, has it been effective? It's really impossible to tell, in my opinion, because what was it trying to do?
Mm.
And you look at the average, like I used a client I worked with really recently. We went in and did a whole kind of audit of what they've got in their business. Basically, they've got, I think, in excess of 600 pieces of custom in-house made content. And it covered everything from onboarding and cybersecurity and compliance, through diversity and inclusion, through well-being, through mental health, through so many different things. And by the time we had said we are going to mark off every piece of content that does not directly align to something people do, they were down to about 40 pieces of content.
Sure.
So you kind of think, so I'm sure some of this was very important in the moment, but why is it here now? And I feel like that's why it's impossible to say whether or not L&D as an industry has been effective. I'd love to say it has, but I just don't get what it was trying to do over the past, I don't know, especially over the past decade. I would say there's been this shift towards awareness of, and we must do a course about this because it's hot right now. Things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that I've fought against, and I'm not sure how much of it is from just organizational misunderstanding or just what people perceive learning as, right? Like you talk about kind of like the existential, like what is learning, right? But people are always like, oh, I need a course on this, or we need a course on this to help people understand, right? The number one learning objective you don't use is understand, right? But like when you're a pizza shop L&D team, right? Like that's, people are like, I need a course so that people can understand this, and like, add some pepperoni, add some banana peppers, and get it to me in 2 weeks, right? And so that's what I fought against a lot, is like telling people I'm not a pizza shop. Like that's not, we ask questions, and I think it has to do a lot with my background and with doing the PhD program in IDT and being taught like the formal needs analysis models and things like that. But we still don't have a good way to measure, right? Like there's still not a good thing that we study in the PhD program to measure the effectiveness of what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, on that note, Phil, nice to have Phil in the chat. Hello. And also hello to Olga and Ren. Thank you for joining us. And Camilla, thank you for joining. So Phil's come in and said, but what about how happy we made them? Long live happy sheets. Luckily, I know Phil well enough to say he's being sarcastic. Otherwise, I'd have to ban him from the chat. But yeah, I mean, I think happy sheets are actually a prime example of where, because we don't have that kind of standard of how do we track effectiveness or impact, or at least not at the detail that people need it, we settle for what we can get. which does tend to be, did you
Right.
enjoy the training? Did you like your
Right.
trainer? Was the
No
room a
one
comfortable
complained.
temperature? Yeah, exactly.
The
It's just
bar is no complaints were made to my boss
no,
about this
yeah,
training.
no one cried, so
Yeah.
that's success apparently. It's yeah,
Unless you're doing soft skills, and then tears are like the desired outcome, right? Like if you're trying to do empathy training, you might want tears.
love it. You know, it's like coming up to a decade here, and I still can go empathy training. Only L&D could go empathy. We're going to train it. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
In 1
That's
hour, you will be more empathic than you have ever been.
this is it. On my personal favorite. It's empathy-based e-learning. It's like, oh, is it?
Oh,
Cool.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Those famously empathic computers that people are going to interact with. Love it. Fantastic. It's these are the kind of items that I always think of whenever someone says no one takes our industry seriously. I'm gonna go, do you want to know why? Empathy training, not just
Because
empathy training, but
it's because we use the same smiley face happy sheet that you use in an airport bathroom. Gotta do better.
Love it. So have you guys got that over there where there's actually like little buttons that people hit on the way out to say this bathroom was a big green smiley face? I'll never forget it. We went, me and Phil worked at the same company actually, and I went to a partner company's amazing training facility that they had, and it was, to their credit, phenomenal. But at the door was exactly that. The little buttons you can hit. I just thought, oh my god, it's a giant training bathroom.
Amazing.
That's
Yeah.
and they would love this data. They're like, it gives us loads of insight. It's like, does it? Like, do you actually walk into your end of year review and go, I'm a really good trainer because I got 40% big green smiley faces? Like, is that actually what your argument is? I don't know. It's an odd one. I got Ren in the chat. Actually, let's skip straight to level 2. I'm assuming we're talking Kirkpatrick.
It's got to be there. What else?
What else is there?
What else is there?
But again, I feel like, and this is just me because like my route into L&D was I decided I wanted to do it from a leadership role, so I went off and did the courses and got the kind of, well, here's Bloom's, here's Kirkpatrick's, here's Gagney, here's on and on the list goes. And I kind of walked away from the Kirkpatrick stuff going, great, I can't do anything with that, but I now understand this model. It's not very applicable. It's not very specific. You have to have, I would say you have to have a lot of experience to actually apply it well, which is a bit of a problem. And other people may disagree. It's only my view of it. I found it to be quite inaccessible. I
remember someone came on my podcast and talked pretty briefly, so I can't even remember which guest it was, but talked pretty briefly about Kirkpatrick's and about how we should keep trying to use it because it's all we've got, right? Like that was the reasoning. And I'm like, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
But like you said, I feel like you have to have not only experience, but also like a long runway to be able to plan out all of those points, and like a ton of buy-in too, right? To be able to execute all of the levels, right?
This is it. And I don't, especially at the higher end, I don't think it's actually within the skill set of most L&D professionals and even L&D teams to do that level of data gathering and analysis. And I think that's, to me, it's one of the more worrying trends at the moment is this, we need to become more data savvy. We need to learn data analytics. And I kind of think, no, most workplaces have professionals that deal in that every other department uses. Why don't we just use them? Like, are we not already wearing enough hats? Like,
right.
I don't know. I'm not convinced that generally the people who draw the funny pictures and make jokes to help people learn, in my instance, are the right people to then go, right, data analysis.
That's
not a natural skills crossover. No.
No, no, yeah, no.
It's
And just the math, like, ew, math, like, that's not
that's
don't
not
look at
the
me if
career I
you want
signed up
data
for.
analysis.
This is it. But like but I think that's the typical kind of L&D approach, is that if it's got to be done, we've got to do it. If it's related to our product, it's
Yes.
on us. And I think that comes from a good place, because that a lot of us got into the industry because we want to make things better, right? And therefore we like learning ourselves. So we go, oh, a new thing to learn. But there is a limit to how much you can do. So I always use the example of, the world gets better when you make friends with the business intelligence department, who already track every possible metric you could want to know about your business. And they do it better than you will ever do it through your LMS, LXP, interviews, or anything else.
Yeah, or marketing, right?
Yes,
Like, if
yeah.
you like, a lot of LMSs have a Google Analytics integration. Do you know how much data that can give you, and how, like, the marketing team can help you use it? And what's been interesting about kind of taking the side step into customer education rather than internal facing L&D is that there are a lot more people in the business willing to help out, because it impacts them too. You're like serving the customer, right? And I've seen more buy-in since I've worked in customer ed, because we're all serving the same end users,
Yeah.
right? Than I have in internal. And it's kind of sad. Like, it's kind of demoralizing.
This is it. It's kind of what makes me a little bit kind of like, really, we get very excited about the idea of XAPI, because it can track all these, again, very us-centric metrics. You kind of think that's still an awfully long way behind the basic tracking I get off a Squarespace website.
Yeah.
Like I can go to my company website and track exactly how many people click this button and how long they're on the website and how many hit the front page and bounced off within 3 seconds. Now, I can track all that stuff from a low-cost web builder, but we're getting excited about XAPI because it can tell us some of that, but with loads of work to make it happen.
Yeah.
The ed tech space I've always found is odd. I think we've been kind of conditioned to accept really just 10 years behind the rest of the world. Hey, back to the conversation as before. We're back to PlayStation 2 and
here we go.
And Xbox. This is lovely. We've got loads of comments coming. Oh, hi, Kara. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Kara.
There was something about, oh, I see, right. Yeah. So if we were to change the hearts of people, we'd be in the manipulation business. Admittedly, it would be easier sometimes. Yes, that's true. Sometimes I prefer to think we need to be in the hard truths business at the very least.
I love that.
It's very, I just recently I've gone back to reading a lot of Guy Wallace's books. Particularly like this series from earlier this year, the Magnifying Proven Practices in Performance-Based Instructional Development Projects. It's a really catchy series title. Small bit of feedback for you guys. It's a heck of, like, it's fine to read, but when you're recommending it to people, it doesn't grab them, But it did make me think about, specifically, it made me think about the order taker stuff. And this L&D's obsession with not being an order taker. And I was chatting to someone the other day, and I kind of said, maybe L&D should shut up and do what the business asked it to do. Because if someone's coming to you saying, I need help, saying, no, I'm not an order taker, doesn't help you and doesn't help them. His argument is always say yes, and then say, I can help you even more by doing this piece of analysis and recommendation and rather than starting your working relationship with a no, because I'm not an order taker thing.
That's how I always do it. I slam my fist on the table and I say, this isn't a damn pizza shop. I will not take your order. Now come back when you have a real question. No.
That's but I don't know. I feel like that kind of, certainly a lot of conferences, I would say over the last 4 or 5 years, have been very, don't be an order taker. You should be driving the business forwards. And I kind of worry that, I don't know, the people I know in L&D, including myself, shouldn't be driving businesses anywhere. Like we work in L&D. We don't work in C-suite company management. They should be driving the ship, and we should be kind of taking orders, at least at some level. If they say we've got a performance problem, our response shouldn't be, well, we're not order takers, so if we can spot the performance problem, we'll fix it. But until then, oh, no. You know?
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, and I think there's also, I was having this conversation with someone recently that there's a level of reputation that you have to build before you can say, yeah, that's not the right intervention, or yeah, that's not what we should be doing, or that has nothing to do with training. That sounds like a something else issue, right? Like you're, you didn't spend enough money on the plumbing for this, I don't know. Whatever the issue is, that has nothing to do with, let's use a training to make sure. But yeah, I think that you have to build up that level of trust and that level of reputation before you can push back on anything, or else, you're just going to be all those difficult people in the L&D department. And then what's going to happen is people are going to start making their own training, and they will, and they do. And then everybody thinks you made that. And now all the garbage training that exists in your company is traced back to you.
Well, yeah, this is it. And it's interesting because I think we do sometimes have that, is that if it's not learning, it's not ours to fix kind of thing. And that's why I kind of think it does performance is performance improvement our future, because performance improvement goes, okay, so learning's not the answer. That's fine. Let's fix the problem rather than trying to make training the answer. And it's a fascinating way of working, and I think I've only got to do it once or twice. But when I speak to people who work in that field, they're so much more engaged in their businesses, generally speaking, than I find L&D teams to be. Like they know what big decisions and discussions are going on in the business. They know what the next 6 months roadmap for the organization is. And I think often the L&D team, sometimes through being shut out and sometimes through shutting themselves out, because it's a two-way door ultimately. Sure. I think don't have that and aren't plugged into that, and therefore go, is learning a solution? No, well then there's nothing we could possibly do to help. And it kind of boxes the industry in, to my mind, to the point where you wonder, why does this exist as well as the one that can fix everything?
Right.
And that's kind of where I'm sat at the minute. I'm wondering, how do both survive moving forwards as businesses, I think, become more aware of what L&D does and doesn't do in their organization. How do you justify we just fix one of, let's say, 3 things versus being learning, human performance-y stuff and process technology stuff? We can fix one of those 3 things, but that other way of working over there can fix all 3.
Yeah.
I think if anyone's got any answers, let me know. But yeah, I just don't see how a business would justify an L&D department when a performance improvement department could, in theory, do a lot more for them.
Yeah. I do like what Olga said, though, that the hardest part of being the service provider is not being able to slam your fists on the table.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's, I can only imagine it, but I can't imagine those frustrations go away if you work on the performance side of things rather than learning.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like, people are still going to be people, right? There's still going to be some senior leadership person going, well, we need it fixed within 20 minutes and, all that kind of stuff. But I think they've when you speak to people in business, and let me know in the chat and yourself, maybe if you've seen something differently, but when I talk about performance improvement teams, departments, consultants, you generally get a positive response from businesses. Then you talk about learning in the workplace, and you don't always get a negative one, but I would argue you get a far less positive approach. You get more of a question around, it's an expense, it's an extravagance, it's unnecessary. Whereas performance, And it's not just the language, but I think the language does help them out in that regard. But I think performance is you can see the benefit in that. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to go, if my team perform better, I make more money. Great, I'm sold. Let's go.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. And I think, I mean, when you tell someone, when everybody in the chat tells someone that you're in learning and development and you like have to explain what it is you do, you know, a lot of times it's like, oh, are you the people that made that awful sexual harassment training or that terrible boring training I had to do during onboarding? And you know, I was just talking to one of my pals who's in instructional design who just started a new role, and he's like, oh my gosh, these onboarding courses are the worst. And you know, I think part of that's that, you know, if you spend a lot of time in L&D and you get a feel for what is good and bad, you're a little more hyper aware, but there's only so it can only get so bad before everyone notices it's bad, right?
Totally. Yeah, I'd agree with that. So I guess sort of one of the things I've been thinking about in this regard is the amount of time the kind of learning industry spends on awareness of stuff. I always kind of joked that awareness, whenever you see awareness course, it's a course that didn't need to be built. But I mean, I use a prime example from the last couple of months. I'm not sure if it's a global thing, but here in the UK, there's been a lot of requests from all sorts of businesses to produce courseware about the menopause and the menopause in the workplace. There's been a lot of books coming out, there's been a lot of television documentaries, and therefore businesses want to produce courses about it. And it's been a bit of an odd one because the question I've still not got an answer back from anyone who's requested it is, what do you want your people to be able to do at the end of this? Because I can't, because I'm creating a course here. It's not a website. It's not an email. The whole point, surely, of a learning intervention is this. And the prime example, this was I had one request go, we want 4 or 5 courses, no more than 15 minutes each. So, sorry, you want to take up like nearly an hour and a half of your people's time, and at the end, you want them to be able to do nothing. Like if
all on menopause.
This is it, and this is an extreme example, I would say. But
sure, but the knowledge that and granted, I'm not yet of that age where I need to know everything, but the knowledge I have of menopause could take up possibly 5 minutes if I stretch it.
And this is it. I kind of thought to fill this amount of time, we're going to have to I don't know, is course 3 going to be like diagnosis and treatment? Are we, these people GPs perhaps?
Yeah.
You'd have to go to a very different, and it just, I wonder how much, from an internal L&D team's perspective, how much of L&D's time, effort, and skill set is utilized for filling that kind of request, producing that kind of content within an organization. Now, I don't know, but I know when I was in-house, we produced a lot of content that I would put into that space. And it was usually a reaction to something of the moment. So when everyone got very concerned, I guess different climate in the States, but everyone got very concerned after the London terrorist attacks, and so all of a sudden we had, for the first time, we were producing workplace learning courses on active shooter in the workplace, bomb threat in the workplace, whereas before the bomb threat in the workplace used to just be part of the which got like the employee handbook that no one would ever read, but totally did read when they started. And signed a bit of paper to say, yes, I've read the employee handbook, all 700 pages of it. Yeah. It's, I must reverse park and I must, run away if the building's on fire, that kind of thing. And now we're creating a course about it. And I kind of wondered, does this make anyone safer? In the event of this happening, does anyone go, I remember my e-learning, I must? I would argue probably not.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're thinking of Okay, so here's where, yes, happy sheets are ridiculous, but here's where I think where listening to your learner and being learner centered makes sense. And it's not in, like, a lot of people are very critical of learner centered instructional design, whatever. And they're that way because they're like, well, the business comes first. Yeah, the business comes first, but like, think about centering your learner, not like what would make you feel warm and fuzzy inside, but like, what are you actually going to do? Are we actually going to put ovary characters in an e-learning and have scenarios where it's like how to talk to someone who's going through menopause, and the awkward, like, Tony, the boss says, it's okay, Mary, that you aren't feeling
Pats on
good
the head.
today. Like, is it appropriate to pat the person on the head or the shoulder? Or like, it's, it's
Yeah.
how do you prepare people, and how would you want to be prepared? Like, some of those things, okay, for menopause, for example, be a kind human. That's not really something we can teach. Like, be a kind human to the people on your team. For like active shooter, it's like, if you are in that position, you are going to be in fight or flight. So unless you can replicate fight or flight for your learners, it's not going to really be helpful exercise, right?
Yeah, I think this is it. It's I always use the example of, if you've got a racist in your business, I can't train them to not be.
Right.
That's the sort of archetypical culture but not learning related issue.
Right.
If you're
Yes.
tolerating that person to be in your business, that's not L&D's issue to fix.
Yes.
Um,
An hour-long e-course on internal bias is not going to keep this
no.
person from spewing crazy stuff on their Instagram.
Exactly. This is it. And then you get into the whole world of, is it a workplace's place to try and change that view? Is it just a case of,
Sure.
if you really don't want that, then you shouldn't employ that person? That's ultimately the decision you get to make. You don't get to decide the political affiliations or the cultural or sociological views of your employees.
Yeah.
You can choose not to employ them, but
Sure.
that's about it. Olga's got quite an interesting comment here, actually. So this is where we need to take a look at the premise of, we need to make training feel safe. These situations are not safe. They'll be intense. You need to learn how to react on a reptilian level. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
That's what
think,
I was kind of saying about, like, if you're going to teach what to do in fight or flight, you have to replicate that fight or flight.
yeah, this is, and it's funny. I'll always remember we tried to do exactly this once and it backfired astronomically, and the business I was in never tried to do it again. Phil, you might remember this. There was a management kind of we'd created this whole new super sort of modern learner centric self-led induction program in a fairly archaic business. We need to get the team leaders on board. So everyone agreed the team leaders were going to go through it. And I thought, brilliant. They'll see what their people are going to go through. They'll get it. They'll get on board. Session 1, we wanted to introduce to them kind of some changes to management that we needed to see within the business. So there was this session, and they walked in, and the session was due to start at 12 and finish at 3. A lot of them, being managers, would finish at 3 because why not? So they walk in, and I wasn't running it, but the person running it went in and went, oh, just to let you all know, there's been a slight mistake. We're actually not going to be finishing till 5. They exploded. Phones and emails and blah, blah, blah. Within a few minutes, they revealed the fact that, of course, that's not what's happening, but you see how a sudden last-minute change can completely derail everything. My God, you would have thought that trainer walked in and shot someone. It was unbelievable. They wouldn't let this completely. I felt terrible. Well, then imagine how your people feel when you do this to them on a regular basis.
Yeah. There you go.
And this is kind of why I get worried, because again, it went down really badly. Never happened again. But this is why the training should always be safe. Worries me a little bit. Because I think, as Olga sort of really sort of in a spot on way said, these situations aren't like, even just in a day-to-day job role, if you really mess up and you're dealing with a customer, there is a very real chance that customer will shout at you and call you terrible things. Guess what? They will not treat you with respect, because unfortunately that's not how human beings do. Apparently, that's it's just not. It doesn't
Sure.
matter that you're just doing your job. Um, it's but it's a very tricky path to walk, because you do want people to be comfortable to an extent, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I tell the story sometimes about how let me back up a little bit. So there was an argument that you can't possibly consider your learners when you're doing compliance training because you have to check a box and it's a legal box that you have to check. So, you can't really consider your learners.
Okay.
And fundamentally, I disagree with that because I think you can have your legal objectives prioritized and still consider what your learner wants. Like,
Yeah.
how do we not trigger people, right? Like, how do we not trigger victims of sexual violence who are sitting at their cubicles, not expecting to be triggered in front of all of their colleagues, right?
Yeah.
And I brought that up when I was working at a place where we were looking for a vendor for sexual harassment training because it's one of those compliance trainings that's so very legal that a lot of people trust somebody else with it rather than making it in-house because of all those checks that you have to do. And, I mentioned to a colleague, like, hey, we should make sure when we're going through this that it's not going to make anybody feel super uncomfortable because, those trainings are rife with like very awkward reenactments that if you are a sane, normal person, that that's not okay, right? So, like, who's it really teaching? Because the degenerates at your work are going to watch that and not care, right? So, like, who are you really helping? And why make somebody feel super uncomfortable? And my colleague was like, why should I care about that? And I was like, because you're in L&D, right? Like, why should we? And active shooter, right? Like,
Yeah.
what if you were in a situation with an active shooter? Like, how, in that way, I think we can make a safe space for our learners. But I think also we can create real experiences too that are still safe.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think this is um, well, we'll come back to this and I'll go about talking about D&I e-learnings trying to change corporate culture. It's we could like a joke book pending for that one. But this one I thought was really interesting. I've spoken to a guy who once made people working in retail sign waivers that they agreed to forego safety and training to get the most real experience. They had role plays where people would yell, insult them, harass them, all things that can't happen in training. And it made me smile because I've been on that training. In my first retail job, you could do it or you could not, and it was called aggressive customer training. And they would have, like, I'm a fairly small person, so it was quite stark. Some photos were used to illustrate this training to people after that session. But it was always small groups, so 3 people went on the course at a time, 1 trainer to 3 people. But the trainer would get right up close to you, like someone in a shop might, and scream at you and demand a refund, and just basically a string of things that you could not do, you could not deliver. It was, I think, the best training I've ever been
You
on.
remember it.
Absolutely. I still use so much of what I learned in that training, and I went, what? I would have been 20, 10 years ago, 10 years ago. Yeah, it would have been a very long time ago now. So yeah, it's stuck with me certainly more than any e-learning I've ever done. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
Especially around that topic, and I don't think it will ever go. Equally, there were people that once I was a manager in that company, I would never send to that course because they would not be able to do it.
Sure.
The flip side of that was, equally, if a customer like that ever came in, I knew my first job was to get them away from that employee.
Yeah.
It's the classic example of, just because you created it doesn't mean it has to be right for everyone.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, it can be for some and not others. Ren, sounds like SAS psych training. That's I think the people in that particular sales business probably did like to think of themselves as like the SAS type.
Oh.
They weren't. They sold mobile phones. They just like to think they were, because they went home and played Call of Duty at the end of the day. Sorry, I did not leave that industry with a particularly high opinion of those I had worked with. I
I
shan't
see
lie.
that.
That was it was not a. Let's put it this way. I dismissed a lot of staff. In fact, that kind of became a key part of my role for the area we were in. And a lot of them were dismissed with the police present to arrest them once we were finishing dismissing them. My personal favourite was selling cocaine from the store bathroom. But there was a lot, lots of nicking stuff and dodgy dealings. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was not an industry that you left going, this is a proud moment for me. I was quite pleased where, like, 6 months after I left, the company went bust.
Oh, there you go. That's always nice.
I didn't shed a tear. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
So let's double back around to diversity and inclusion e-learning, changing corporate culture. Heidi, what do you think?
First of all, there's not really a need to be creating D&I e-learning, first of all. There are plenty of resources to curate out there that are good. And so there's not really a lot of reason to do that in-house. You probably have way bigger priorities in-house in terms of D&I. Finding an operational framework and finding where L&D fits within that strategy. Are you fitting in the assisting people with retention and, but the e-learning, again, we talked about this and think about, all right, I want everybody to think about the last engagement that you went to for someone else, right? Think about that for a moment. Think about the last thing on your calendar that you did that wasn't something you wanted to do, but that you were doing for someone else, a spouse, a kid, whatever. How many times did you have to remind yourself or look at your calendar to see when that was? And that's like a drop in the bucket of what core values to a human being are, right? And you probably had to look at it 3 to 7 to 10 times, right? Like I'm always doing that. Like, what is this? So imagine how many times you have to learn something that's aligned with core values to really have it sink in or move you or motivate you or whatever. Like you're talking about fundamentally changing people. That can't be done with e-learning. Who is fundamentally changed by e-learning? If you think about, on the other hand, aside from like retention, if you think about what's a really impactful book that you read or movie that you watched or TV show that you binged, right? Like, and how many times have you gone back to that? Or how many times have you thought about that? And what was it about it? Because it wasn't a PowerPoint that you clicked through, right?
Do you know what? Funny, it didn't have an assessment at the end. There weren't 5 multiple choice questions, so I finished the book and had no idea if I'd learned anything. It's yeah, that's.
But you would have given it a green smiley.
Oh, that's true. That's very true. I would have given it a green smiley. That's yeah. And that's pretty much exactly it. But my go back to it is just, what's the metric? There isn't one. Therefore, it's not trying to do anything. What that content is trying to do is make an executive feel better, usually about the lack of diversity and inclusion in their business. Because if you have to create e-learning for it, there's a problem. Like if you actually have to.
Right.
If the request has come in because something has happened, the business is trying to dodge making fundamental changes by creating learning. And I feel like we're not helping, we're actually hindering that good cause at its core by going, don't worry, we'll learn the problem away. by saying, actually, no, that guy's really dodgy and we just need to get rid of him. But sometimes that's the solution.
Right. And if it's to solve a problem, it's likely not going to work. If it's to strengthen or like teach some like people something they didn't already know who are already on board, right? Like if it's to move the needle a little bit, right? Like, okay, maybe I'm not familiar with the history of LGBTQIA plus and it's the rights movements in the United States. I have to already be on board with the idea, and then maybe I can learn some things, right? That can maybe help me or maybe make me understand people better. But to correct a problem,
that's it. And I certainly, like as you say, I think to me this is a space that should be resource. It's not often that I say resource over course, but this isn't a training exercise. It is genuinely a learning exercise. So that's where I'd say the distinction is, because you're right. Someone who cares will read that article you send out about the civil rights movement, about the history and the key people and the impact it's still having today. Someone who does not care is not going to read it, and it doesn't matter whether it's a PDF, a web article, or a 15-minute e-learning. Except the 15-minute e-learning is going to go, great, we trained 600 people on the civil rights movement, and that sounds good for the L&D department, until someone from L&D comes in and goes, why?
Right.
Or someone from the C-suite says, and how has that improved the business? Because we sell soup,
right?
How many more cans of soup have we sold? Because regardless of what any C-suite says, that's what they care about.
Right. Sure.
That's why the business exists. Everything should exist as a function of, in their case, selling more soup. Sure. And part of that is having a diverse and inclusive workforce, because all the research says a diverse and inclusive workforce will be more productive, will perform better. Great. But therefore, there's an extent to which it will benefit the business. They don't need to train everyone to become a civil rights advocate. They just need everyone to, like you said at the start, be a decent human being to each other.
There you go.
I always think Google used to have it right when their value was don't be evil.
Yeah.
Perfect. Quite noticeably.
The irony, it didn't age well, but
they got rid of it, which was the most interesting thing. Like, it disappeared from their values list in the mid-2000s, and everyone was like, so you're no longer actively not being evil.
It was replaced with a photo of a man petting a cat.
That's it.
Right?
Just Dr. Evil turning around going, hello, I have your data. Oh, marvelous. That's incredibly dated. I did a reference about Dr. Evil a couple of weeks ago to my youngest sisters. They had no concept of who he was. And then when I explained he's the bad guy from the Austin Powers movie, didn't know who Austin Powers was. It was very upsetting. Very upsetting.
Wow. Okay.
This was shocking.
Okay.
So if you don't in the chat, just don't bother commenting, because you'll just upset me more. So Terry asks, I think we've killed off the diversity and inclusion topic there. Neither of us big fans. Let's look at it that way.
Well, Olga did ask a question about it. So is there anything that the L&D part of business can do? And so I did want to make sure that we address that. Definitely. Of course you can go ahead and make sure that whatever you're creating contains those values, right? Like if it's just as simple as representing visually different kinds of people, or making your L&D content accessible for all types of people, right? There are subtleties, but we don't have to be the protesters.
I would say you can just do it like that. I was speaking to someone not so long ago. They were putting together a diversity and inclusion strategy about how they can not about how to do it, but about how they could make sure their people see them doing it. And I said, well, just do it. Be decent to everyone in your business. Trust me, they'll notice. Like, it's really quite simple. And I think you're spot on, I think, with what L&D can do. L&D should just keep it front of mind in everything we design, every consideration, everything we do. And then it doesn't become a big deal.
Right.
5 years ago, I would agree, it was very difficult to find anything other than middle-aged white men in suits going on stock image sites. It's not the case anymore. Even the most corporate stock sites like Shutterstock and Envato Elements, which I know I've spoken about before, now has a huge range of diverse imagery. It's usually even got its own sort of category, so you can go through it if you need to find it, which speaks to a problem in of itself, doesn't it, really? But, at least you can get to it quickly.
Sure.
It's, to me, that's as much as we need to do. We don't need to go, hey, look, we didn't use a picture of a white person in this e-learning. We can just do it.
Yeah.
It's simple stuff. Now, Phil he thinks it's Huel, and I think he's right. The main thing on their wall in their office is just "Don't be a dick" in big black letters. I'm sure everyone's probably seen that shared around on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I must admit, I'm still hesitant to trust any business that has to write its values in big letters on the wall, because you have to remind people that often. It's not a good sign. But I like the idea. It's shocking, I suppose, isn't it? You're never going to forget that.
For sure. Yeah.
Yes. So from Terry, then, thoughts on learning in the flow of work. Heidi, you look excited about this topic.
It's not that I don't think these things are things, right? Like, it's not that I don't think that there's value. It's that I'm just so tired of like renaming something and pretending it was your idea. I remember back in like 2014 when I was doing a grad degree in curriculum and instruction, right? And they were talking about classroom strategies. And they were like, ooh, here's this strategy called Think, Pair, Share, where you get together with another classmate, you talk about the thing, and then you separate and you share back what you talked about with the class. And I was like, partner work? Are they trying to rebrand partner work? Like, I've been doing this since kindergarten. And learning in the flow of work is like, it reminds me of like, what's the movie A Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger, R.I.P. And like the whole idea of apprenticeship. Yeah, on the job training, Terry. Apprenticeship. Apprenticeships have been around since the medieval times. But now we're calling it learning in the flow of work to make it hot and sexy.
There's a chap called Robin Hoyle, who I'll always remember did a fantastic keynote at the second Connect conference here in the UK, which is coming up in October/November. People, if you're around, book tickets. They're going on sale next month, shilling over. I have to do that these days for the Learning Network. We've got to get people in. It's our first in-person conference in like 2 years. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, so he talked about exactly that. Apprenticeships and how we almost now go, oh, well, apprenticeships are something completely different to what we do. It's like, are they? Don't they do a job and learn and ask questions along the way? Yes. That's it. There's nothing more. Used to, and then for a while, it was just doing your job. Like, it's crazy. So how do you learn in the flow of work? Well, when I get to something that I can't do, I Google it. It's just my job. That's how you function in the modern world. 30 years ago, when you got something you couldn't do, you turned around and you asked Janet, who'd been here for 30 years, and she told you how to do it. Or if she didn't know, she found you the big ass binder somewhere that would tell you how to do it, and you followed it through, and you probably photocopied that page and put it on your desk for a month until you could remember it.
Yeah.
It's crazy that we feel, as you're right, we feel the need to rebrand constantly. Sort of learning in the flow of work. We had It was something else that, like inside the time that I've been in, I know that's been called other things. It's crazy.
Like workflow learning, and
That's it. Yes.
yeah, it's been called numerous things. But the other thing that it reminds me of is in my first instructional design job. So I came from higher ed, I was a professor, and my first instructional design job was with NASA. And I was part of a really cool formal needs analysis where I got to go to all 10 NASA centers and talk to learners about how they felt about the curriculum.
You mean astronauts?
But no, it was engineers. It was engineers. So no,
you mean
I did meet one
scientists?
astronaut. Yes, definitely.
Because my first job, it was just with NASA. Whatever.
No big deal.
And then I went around all the NASA sites and spoke to these rocket scientists and just one astronaut.
It's one astronaut. Only one meeting with an astronaut, but yeah.
Shocking.
But what I remember from it was, this is going to sound weird, but the amount of information that was in the bathrooms at all the different centers and how different it was from center to center. And that's what learning in the flow of work reminds me of, is how do we get somebody to see the announcement that we want them to read? We put it on the back of the bathroom door.
Absolutely. This is it. That's reminds me. Because obviously that's a lot of that is like nudge theory, right?
Yes.
Someone recently was talking to me about something. They asked if I can't remember what they called it. Whisper learning. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Whisper learning. I was like, no concept what this is. Oh, it's like an email or a text that goes out daily to tell you about it. So, it's nudge. We've rebranded it to Whisper. We've gone from nudge to Whisper.
We're doing it with more care and delicacy now.
Maybe this is about the safety thing again. We used to be able to touch them and give them a little nudge. Now we just have to whisper at them.
Yeah, it's just not allowed to nudge people anymore.
Yeah, and it wasn't like the person who had asked me. It was just my stroke that the industry's done it again. Like this was a book and a kind of not huge body of research, but some solid research done around this idea. And now L&D's got its hands on it. We're changing the name.
Okay, but we're doing that, right? Like we're doing that. We're renaming learning in the flow of work. We're calling micro-learning whatever the hell we're calling micro-learning today. We're,
nano learning now, I think.
There you go. Yeah.
It's
yes, there it is. We're, all of these different things, right? We're not calling us instructional design anymore. We're calling us, don't get me started on that one. But we still are using the same technology from Halo years. So instead of focusing on what we should be focusing on, which is, yo, Adobe, where is it? Where is it? Huh? Where is it? I'm waiting. Is it coming or not? I'll believe it when I see it. Or SCORM, God forbid, right? Like, we're not trying to reinvent SCORM. No, we're trying to still hold on to it. Flash. You can still find Flash in job descriptions for IDs. I hope you know that.
Do you know what? Funny enough, I saw it yesterday. Worse still, I saw an authoring tool that was launched 2 years ago that allows you to install Flash. It's like, why would you ever give someone the option?
It's amazing.
I was not impressed.
I don't blame you. But yeah, we're focusing on the wrong stuff.
Definitely. So, that was all very positive. There we go. Olga, SCORM's already reinvented. Will it ever be discontinued? Do you know what the scary thing is? I don't think it will. At the start, I kind of said, I think we've been conditioned to just accept crap in the tech space. But what does SCORM's terrible. Very little data, poor reporting, etc., etc. Cool. What's L&D doing with all the data it's gathering at the moment?
Sending out passive aggressive emails to people who haven't completed the training yet.
Exactly, which we can do with Scorm, so it's fine. Yeah, I mean, you look at how we clung on to Flash. Like, we were the last industry in the world going, I can convert your Flash e-learning to HTML5 at a reasonable rate. Blah, blah. The rest of the world was looking at us going, you've still got stuff in Flash. Like, Adobe warned us of this like 5 years ago, and everyone else changed like that. Like, it's crazy. Like, right at the deadline, it was L&D and a couple of those old like Flash games on the internet, the only ones still using Flash. That's it. Absolute madness.
L&D and Hamster Dance were like the last two.
Oh, Ren, not seeing any drinks. We've got iced coffee, and I'm just finishing off my beer, which has been delicious. Actually, it was. I'm not finishing it. This is a bigger can than I thought. I'm having a Bad Kitty Vanilla Porter. We did do a bit, but it was a bit disjointed at the start. I got very excited about having a different co-host and kind of missed the drinks, and we had to loop back to them. That's okay. I'm just doing the L&D thing of pointing out that you're wrong, and this is why you're wrong, and now you know. And what I'll do is I'll follow up with a post later on with a course about the drinks that we're having, just to make sure you thoroughly understand them. It's the L&D way.
With a short knowledge check. Please give us a green smiley face.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's it. Well, whilst we're on the note of green smiley faces, do hit the YouTube equivalent of the green smiley face, which is, of course, the like button. And just don't send a whisper. No, I won't send a whisper. That sounds like a really creepy approach for L&D, thinking, hey, do you want to do some learning? That's not cool. That's...
I need a soundbite of that. Oh my gosh.
That's awesome. I might have to do that. Yesterday I got a fantastic message from a brilliant voiceover artist, and not gonna lie, whenever I see a voiceover artist, I tend to go, no, I don't have any jobs at the moment, but I'll put you with it. But actually, he's a really nice guy. He appeared on the Ideas podcast a little while ago, actually talking about voice acting. It was really interesting. And he's like, do you know anyone who works in the e-learning world that might want to write some comedy voiceover scripts about e-learning? It's like, yes, me. This sounds awesome. So I'm not sure if people want to make fun of it. It's like, oh, trust me, as an industry,
yes,
we are very good at doing this.
That's a genius marketing idea.
And I think the Whisper is going to be making it in. That's fantastic. I'd love to start a course of that now. Just a whole course of being whispered at. Lovely. There we go.
Oh, I hate how whispering sounds on microphones, though, and on like commercials. Loud whispering. I know some people are into that, and it's like ASMR. Oh, it grinds my nerves. Yeah. Oh,
okay.
That's a deal breaker for me.
Could be a whole new stream for the channel, like ASMR storyline. Just very, very quiet, and then random outbursts of insane swearing for like 20 minutes when something doesn't work. So the full immersive experience of being an instructor. No instructional design course covers that, I've noticed.
Right. But your new, you're working out loud on YouTube. That's going to be part of it, right?
That's it. Yeah. This is what no one trains you. You're going to need a good variety of profanity that you can use. Now, you're not going to be saying this to people, just your computer screen.
Right.
Olga, okay, I'd actually love to hear your take on audio narration in e-learning. Hi, and welcome to this course. You're going to learn.
By the end of this course, you're going to know you're going to understand. You're going to be prepared to fight an attacker who breaks into your workplace. And you're not going to be racist anymore. Congrats.
Excellent. That's a fantastic voiceover voice for
Thank you.
There you go. So, what do you think?
I think that if you talk to most instructional designers, they have a e-learning voice from necessity. I guess Our take on audio narration and e-learning. Well, I think that if we're going with Myers multimedia principles, that it's a good idea to have narration in your e-learning. However, oh my gosh, please, for the love of God, do not make it say exactly what is on the screen. That's also part of Myers multimedia principles. But I was involved in a course once. Well, no, I was not involved. It was hired by a third party, but I had to review it. And when I reviewed it, I said, this is garbage. And they all said, we don't care. We already paid for it.
Thanks for asking.
Right. But it was like an SOP that they wanted like shortened high level overview so that people don't have to actually read the SOP. Well, instead they took the entire SOP word for word and put it on PowerPoint slides and then had the narrator read what was exactly on the slides. And it was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my career to this date. But if you have money to get a voiceover person, do it because they're all really cool and really nice. Like I've not met a voiceover person that I didn't like, and I've met quite a few. A lot of budgets won't support it, and so you have to be a person who wears many hats and do your own. I'm sure everybody has had to do their own at some point, right? But human narrated videos, Ren said yes to human narrated to instructional videos.
Yeah.
Yes. If like you're just doing a prototype, you can use the text to speech. Like if it's just for review and you're not finalized yet, cool. But like robot voices are not it.
I don't think I could ever bring myself to roll out an end state product with an automated voice to it.
I've had to before.
Really? Did you get it? Because I've always wondered, and maybe you'll have insight, maybe you won't. I don't know. I've always wondered, is it just something that people like us care about, or do real end users actually care? Because I do sometimes wonder about some of the stuff we fuss about. I do sit there wondering, I really care about that text alignment. I don't think the end user gives a crap.
So it was a series of like these short email whispers. I'm sorry, I have to use the whisper. These short little email whispers to customer service about like just tips and tricks for talking to the customers. And so it was just like a 2-minute Beyond video. It was already cheesy with the Beyond characters on purpose. We had like a fake character that we made and we were just being silly and having fun with it. So I think the tone was okay where it wasn't being taken very seriously anyway. But I mean, think about I don't know, like a heavier topic. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of, all kind of audio in e-learning. Like, I'm one of the heathens that thinks music has a place in e-learning, not underneath everything, I would stress to add.
Sure.
But I think, I'll do voiceover first. I think good quality voice acting can elevate something massively. If you want to see an example of that, check out the videos by ELearning. They do not just voiceover, but voice acting. It's fantastic. Similarly, I've done it myself when there's no budget. I was the voice of the water meter in the induction at Thames Water. Hi, I'm a water meter. And when I'm around, things are smart. It was quite it was interesting. Let's put it that way. It was fun up until the moment someone went, I recognize your voice. You're the water meter. And I'm like, oh no. This cannot be what I become known as. I will not have on my tombstone the voice of the water meter.
Yes. I mean, I guess there are worse things, but yeah.
Yeah, but not many. That's if that becomes the pinnacle of what you achieve in your career, you voiced a 30-second video about water meters. Like, yeah, career highlight right there. So I regret not keeping a copy of that video. I love it.
Yeah.
It was one of the first bits of animation I ever did. It's really good fun. And I would encourage you to do that, but don't just. I don't know. I feel like that it's a good opportunity, especially if you're doing some animation, to actually do some voice acting, not just read the script. Go for it. Put on a voice. Give it that kind of tip of the hat to the fact of this is a little bit silly, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think actual narration irks me quite significantly, and that's because I prefer to read. And I've always used the example of you don't read a book and listen to the audiobook version at the same time, do you? That would be, you would probably go nuts by the end of like chapter 4. In reality, so yeah, I think if you've got to have it, put it, make it optional and default it to off.
Toggle, yeah.
But more so, I think quite often I get it from but it's about accessibility, but it's not. It in no way aids accessibility. If someone can't read it, they will have a screen reader, and you should have built your content with a screen reader in mind. They don't need a voiceover. Will a voiceover perhaps be better than the tone of voice that a screen reader reads as? Yes, it probably will. However, they also don't have control over that voiceover, so it's not accessible. If I'm using a screen reader, I can say, read me this bit versus that bit. I can set the speed. I can, your screen reader will be set to read in your language, in your dialect, accent. Quite often it'll be localized. Voiceovers, unless you're going to spend some serious money, are not going to be localized. I would argue that they are far less accessible than letting someone use a screen reader.
Well, also, if you're not matching what's on screen to the narration, if you're following best practice, then now the person is having to listen to the screen reader and listen to the narration and find the middle ground. And it's,
great. Yeah. Sounds like an awesome experience, doesn't it?
Take the course twice, basically.
That's it. But I think it has a place. You've just got to use it like you use anything else. Same as animation and humor and music. It's all about when and how you use them. I think music has a special ability to talk to emotion in the way that no matter how good at writing you are as an ID, you're not that good. If you were, you'd be an author, not an ID. That's, I always think we deal in bullet points and information, not so much with the emotional writing. Some of us are better at it than others, but I've never been swept away to an alternate world for 3 weeks on a piece of e-learning. I don't often of an evening go, I fancy reading something, I'll boot up that course about. It's just not that good. It's perfectly well written for what it is, but it's not that good. I think music does that a lot better, if you can find a way to use it where it's not going to get in the way. So let's have a look. Oh, we've got some comments coming through then. Seriously, I felt I betrayed a close held belief as to what is really effective for the sake of this is what we agreed. I think we've all done that at some point.
Sure.
Like, I know I've certainly put out work that I would be too embarrassed to attach my name to publicly.
Sure. Yeah, 100%.
And we will not cover that in any more detail, obviously. Olga can't stop thinking about the 40% or close of Instagram users who watch stories and reels on mute. I joined Instagram this week, so I have no idea, but I'm assuming these are videos.
Yes, they are. Yeah. Cool. Are you similar to TikTok? Are you on TikTok?
I joined Instagram this week. What do you think about TikTok?
TikTok still has his MySpace.
I reckon I could. Is the website still there?
Not in its original form, no.
Because I'm fairly confident I can remember my login details.
It changed into a music site for a while, and everyone's other profiles were gone. But yeah, sad. I think it's still a thing, but I don't know.
But how will I find Teenage Tom's super personalized skinned MySpace page that automatically plays a song just to show how individual I am when people visit my profile?
And to know who his top 8 are. Who are Tom's most important friends?
This is it. That's I think I had 8, maybe. Probably not. One day I'll have a top 8 friends list.
Oh my God.
Right. let's keep going. Trade. Can we talk a bit about? We don't usually get this much chat engagement. Could you guys shut up and go away, please? I am, of course, just joking. It's lovely to have you all here. Joey's going to feel bad. We never get this many people chatting to us when he's here.
It was the promise of having a Barbara Walters / Hugh Downs like experience. I think that was it.
I do feel like you've kind of set quite a high bar. Like, we need to end this with a dance number or something. This is...
Yeah, I know, but I'm not dancing. Yeah.
Oh no, we're totally not doing that. You can just all be disappointed. Right. So can we talk a bit about how we can actually implement all these great ideas in our teams if our colleagues are not quite there in terms of this understanding, and how we can bring them along gently but firmly? You fire them and you hire a new team. No, obviously not, unless you can, in which case do it. Do you know what? It's the trickiest element, isn't it? Is actually doing this stuff, because it's easy to sit at the internet and talk about it.
It's just like real life.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess the question you have to ask first of all is, why is your team not there? Are they trying to get there, or are they, as some people are, prepared to plod along as they are until retirement? Because then you've got two very different situations. If they're willing to just plod along until retirement, my genuine advice would be, don't waste your time trying to persuade them. Because they're never going to be, I mean, I would point out, I don't know where you are in the world, but here it's late evening in the UK and you're logged into a live stream talking about instructional design. Clearly you care. You want to, you're fairly engaged in what you're doing. You want to do well. If they don't, then there's not really very much you can do, except for pointing out to them that if you do a good job, they'll have less work.
Sure. Well, and I think the other thing too is, as a manager, I'm in the unique position where I can hire super passionate people, and I did, and my team is awesome. They've been in the chat here supporting me, so that's, even that just says a ton. But you can pass up to your manager those hey, let's do some team building, right? Let's all read Julie Dirkson's Design How People Learn and talk about it. And that's, a way that you can do affordable professional development and, kind of subtly push your agenda and subtly push. The other option is to just do a really good job so that you raise the bar for the rest of your team. Right? You start doing the cool things, and they can either start doing them too, or everyone's going to request to work with you.
This is it. I think there comes a point where what you can't do is wait for everyone else to start doing the right thing. I think there is if you're willing to do it, and that's a big if, then be the trailblazer in your business. I would warn you, that is not an easy path to walk down. You will fall out with people. You will upset people. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you're making them look bad. And it's not deliberate. Don't go out of your way to do it. That goes back to our don't be evil thing earlier. But, that it isn't as easy as you might. Just do the right thing always, all the time, as if somehow that's super easy for us all to do, right? Like I said, even now, there are times when I make the argument for let's do X, Y, and Z, let's do this right, let's do it the best possible way, and I lose. And that's just the way it always will be. There will always be scenarios in which you have to compromise, even though you were right. That's the world we live in, unfortunately. So I'd say be willing to do that. But if you can, always try and at least put forward the argument for doing it the best possible way. Then you set that understanding within the business of this is where you are and where you want to take things. And if everyone says no to you, then so be it. It's on them. But you can always go back to what I suggested was. And after maybe a couple of less than totally effective things go out to the business, as I found, people will start coming to you and saying, you're the person who said we should have done that differently. Talk to me about that. It'll take time and it'll be frustrating, but it will happen.
Sure. Yeah.
But I love what you said, Heidi, about kind of upskilling the team in those kind of
Yeah.
slightly subtle ways. I really like that. I think that's a good. It's hard to, as long as you have a reasonably good working relationship, even if they don't want to read the book, let's say, you telling them about it is a great way to get them on board. Take them to events as well. Like, I remember taking a really disengaged person who didn't really care much about the industry. I took them to a learning tech and a CIPD event one year, and they came back talking about, I saw this and I saw that, and I spoke to this person, and we're going to connect on LinkedIn. I'm going to catch up with them next week. It's like, wow.
It's like a revival.
This is it. Yeah. But it really worked for that person, I think, because they finally saw that it wasn't just them sat in their office in their business with their head down. It was this industry. But I said the other day on a webinar, actually, I think often large parts of the L&D industry are invisible from each other. I think there are a lot of, especially like people who are facilitation-based trainers in the L&D world, just see their company and the facilitator guide and the PowerPoint slides in front of them. That's all. That's their view of what training and learning and work is. And you kind of have to grab them, turn them around and say, look at all this. You can have a Lion King moment. Everything the light touches will be yours. Storyline in the corner. Don't look. It's like the dark patch over there. Don't look there. Don't look there. Just everything else.
I love it. I love it.
But yeah, and that's quite nice to try and bring people along anyway. What else have we got? What could we do that? Things that risk me because I don't control the speed. Blimey, I've lost my place. Oh, Ren, you're in the UK. There we go. Yeah, so there you go. You're here at like 9:30 in the evening. So clearly you're on board about this. So the scary thing is, I'm thinking of someone who's actually interested in learning accessibility, but still uses text to speech and voiceover saying, welcome to this e-learning. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that if you know they're interested in accessibility, have that conversation with them. Talk to them and say, well, look, make them the champion for accessibility. Champions and teams and all this kind of thing. It's kind of a bit done, but ask them to lead on it. Ask them to tell you about accessibility. I think often people go against what they really want to do because they feel like they don't want to be the person to stand up and wave the flag. Sure. We all just want to fit in most job workplaces, right? So kind of give permission for them to be a bit kind of like, no, you should speak up and I'll have your back. It's easier when there are two of you, when you think your entire team is going to turn around and tell you to shut up and sit down, you're not very likely to speak up. Whereas if at least one person's going, no, if you say it, I'll back you up.
Right.
It goes a long way. Lots of people loving your input there. There we go. My helmet hurts from all the going over the parapet. Get that? Yeah, and that's the reality of it. I think I'm sure most of us here have experienced it. Is if you want to move things forward in most corporate L&D functions, you just got to keep taking the hits and just keep looking down occasionally to realize you have gone a couple of inches forwards. I always remember I always had someone who would always, whenever I'd get really kind of, no difference, blah, 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 he'd always show me the kind of, well, look at what was happening when we started and now look at what we're doing. He said, it may feel like we've gone nowhere, but actually, it's, look, we're not using the inbuilt player buttons in Storyline anymore. That was a victory. That was a big victory.
Baby steps. Baby steps.
Hey. That's sometimes you've got to look for those small steps, because if you're looking to go from fundamental issues to world-class function, it's not going to happen like that. It's going to be small, stupid changes, but they will add up over time. I think if you can find a way that accessibility is what can help drive it, though, like you were discussing there, I think that's a strong argument to go to any business with.
Absolutely.
Because what business is going to go, no, we don't want our learning to be accessible. Like that's That's
Right. Especially
yeah.
if there are other initiatives taking place in the business. It's a
Yeah,
great way to piggyback.
exactly. You're all right, though. It is much easier to keep your head down and be all happy-go-lucky. Everything's great, love my job, and just churn out junk. Absolutely. And people have long and happy careers doing that. And, you know, that's... I kind of used to get really angry about it, but actually I've kind of reached, you know what, that's fine. That's the career and the life they want. And I think as I've got a bit older, I've kind of thought, you know what, I get it. Not everyone wants to spend
I
their
get it.
life fighting, right?
Right.
It's, I always used to say I'd need half an hour after every meeting to calm down. And I look back at it and think, wow, that is when what we do is make e-learning. That's or what I did on that team. It was just exclusively we
You're
just
not
designed
a
e-learning.
boxer. You're
This
not
is
a
it.
surgeon. You're not.
That's it. It's
You are making e-learning.
Yeah, this is it. And it wasn't important e-learning, as in not important at all. Like very important in that room of people. No one outside cared. But hey, oh, here goes some advice from Olga here. So what's worked well for me is challenging your own quality standards.
Like
and fostering a culture that you can share. Absolutely. I've been thinking at the minute about working with some people on my team to draft very clearly documented kind of standards for design, development, consultancy, that kind of thing. And I think it makes a big difference because once that conversation started, a lot of stuff came out as this is happening and that's happening. And I thought we were doing this. And you're like, there we go. This is good. Even before we've documented anything. Fantastic. Small steps, absolutely. Hey, Joey's here. Hey, dude. Am I late? Yeah, just a bit, but don't worry about it. I think we've had like a record number of people joining in the chat. So sorry, dude, you're out.
Oh my god. No.
See, one episode and Heidi's like, no, not coming back. I'm done. This was terrible.
Rare occasions only.
There we go. Ren, last one there. So I'm not even telling them. I'm pushing accessibility as a given. Yep. And it's putting it as a win as a strong point for the company. We look like what they're doing in terms of accessibility and we didn't even realize. Yeah, I think sometimes that's the thing. You can turn it into a fight by doing the kind of, so we're going to do a new thing. I think it's, I think that's a good shout. Kind of stealthing that performance improvement in there. There we go, Joey. Yeah, knew it would happen. Yeah, absolutely. That's so it's as much as we go about. It's important to not fall victim to imposter syndrome. It's also good to have a realistic view of your ability and station within the world. I should say this: I'm here for all the other ones as well. So the real learning is clearly every last Friday of the month. We should just put Heidi on a live stream.
Oh God, sounds like a terrible idea.
Oh dear, but yeah, no. So I guess we've gone for just over an hour and a half, so we're gonna wrap up. But going back to the central question, then, because I know we've discussed a lot of topics in this episode. What do you think, looking back at performance improvement? Because I think, judging from everything we discussed, I think we could probably all agree that it's very difficult with a straight face to say that L&D has been and is universally effective, or in any way, shape or form effective, in my opinion. But I know that's a strong one for everyone to get on board with. So what can we take from the world of performance improvement that would help us move that needle forwards?
I think if we're going to let's say we're just going to take one thing. Okay, let's do that for the sake of wrapping things up, right? Only one thing, it would be non-instructional interventions. 150%. If you've not looked up the ISPI HPT model, just look it up. Just look at it. Like it will make so much sense to you as an instructional designer. I promise it won't be that far of a stretch for you at all. But it's all about, it's not about, okay, I need a training for X. All right, fine, I'm going to make an e-learning. It's about, what are the other things? Can we put a poster on the back of the bathroom door? Can we send an email? Can we, just have a conversation in a meeting, and we don't have to do a training, right? Like, non-instructional interventions are real, and we don't have to just always default to e-learning.
Yeah. So I was going to say exactly the same. Different examples. The prime example is that system changes as well. Being able to look at it and say, go and interview a set of users just to find out them going, yeah, the system doesn't work. It's been broken for 6 months. Well, there's your fix. It's that's a real world example. I've had that conversation and gone, and still got well, what can training do? I don't know. Ring tech support, I guess. We're on it. Don't worry. We don't even need some e-learning to do it. I think fantastic. So I think that's a really strong, nice final point to finish with. I think that the link to the ISPI is a great example as well. They were recently in the video I did about lifelong learning and groups that you should consider joining. They produce some awesome research into the world of performance improvement, and you get lots of videos of people like Guy Wallace and other people like that, who will be able to provide you with more insight, certainly, than I can. Couple of last comments then just before we go. We've got Terry. Spending the last hour and a half with you both has been so much more rewarding than watching Dr. Phil. I mean, I'm not quite sure who Dr. Phil is.
Oh, you'll have to Google it.
I guess this is an American thing. Yeah, this is cool. Okay. There you go. Such valuable insights into the L&D discipline. Thank you both from here in West Virginia. You're very welcome. Thank you for spending your Friday afternoon, I guess, for you guys. Friday afternoon with us. Before you go, if you haven't already, please do head over to the Block podcast using the link at the start of the chat. Oh God, the chat's way too long. I can usually get links really quickly. There we go. Copy link address. Send to all. Do go and listen in. It's a fantastic podcast that Heidi does. Thank you. Well worth a listen. It's also a lot shorter than the ones that I do, so don't worry. It doesn't ramble on as much. Heidi does this weird thing called editing, like where she does some work after the recording, whereas I just kind of go, slap a bit on either end and upload. That's it. Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining. We will obviously be back next month for the next ID update. It might be Joey. It might be someone else. We shall see how it goes. See if he continues to have this social life thing going on. Heidi, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's been so much fun.
My pleasure. And until next time, let's roll that intro one last time. There's only one place for the breaking news in the world of instructional design. The ID Update with Tom and Heidi. All the news you never knew you never needed. Only on IDT.